Sup, everybody? Sup, Carrie and Rebecca?
What's up, everyone?
What's up?
I am curious, did you guys get an email today about bringing friends to conference? Anyone?
Yes.
Yes. So who doesn't love a deal? I love a deal. And if you bring 4 people to conference with you, guess what? 1 out of the 5 is free. Boom. Mic drop. So bring your teams, conference. You should have gotten an email today if you're on our email chain.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. And speaking of that, I got something in the mail recently.
Oh, I did see a picture yesterday.
I know.
I'm
We are
so
all
excited.
protected.
I love
Ramping
swag.
up. Swag is
swag.
the best. Yes.
It is.
So that is still 6 months away. And yet we have a lot more going on in the meantime. Carrie, what you got going on for us? Anything good?
Yes, we got some good stuff going. Let me share my screen here. You guys can see my PowerPoint slides.
Oh, fun. That's awesome.
Our picture from yesterday. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. I love it.
Guys, when you order your conference tickets, you get free swag this year. More free swag. So check us out. All right, we're on YouTube right now, live. Thanks for sharing our content. We want you to subscribe, like, comment, and share. We're on YouTube and Facebook. Next week on SUP, we'll have Pam Reddens with us, from our resident services director from Harmony River Living Center. Looking forward to that, 7 o'clock next Tuesday. So last week on Live at 5, a couple of topics we had: how to help someone with contractures. That's when the limbs are all contracted together. What to look for with gem states. Our PAC team, our Live at 5 team loves going over those gem states for our viewers. And then 5 steps to try for sundowning. So definitely 3 how-tos here and more to look for on Live at 5 every day on Facebook. TIPA for 10. So last week, we were talking a lot about change. Matthew, what is, I think we were talking about this yesterday. How do you get help when you want and release the support that is not working without hard feelings? Oh, we talked about this in a dementia problem solving once too.
Yeah, such a big topic, and it goes right into the 6 pieces of the puzzle, something that, and it's a tool that PAC consultants will use a lot of. Oh, thank you, Carrie. There you go. And we have talked about this, the 6 pieces as well before on SUP, but TIPA really touched on that piece of the stakeholders and how a lot of times we want to try to find somebody who can join us to support us in situations when we're trying to change, and how important it is to be aware of when we're adding somebody in there, that if we bring that person in and we're leaving another person, if we leave that other person out, what might happen? So check it out. Great series on how to help in situations when you're wanting to bring in help and support, but you may be noticing, some of this support isn't as helpful as I thought it was going to be. And what do I do? Because I don't want to burn that bridge, but I need to do something different. So check it out.
Yeah, I actually just had this issue today. When my previous healthcare provider left the agency she was working for, and they called and said, we need to get you a new primary person. And I wanted a woman. Today I showed up at the doctor with what I thought would be a female doctor, and it was not. And now I was like, now what do I do? This person hasn't done anything wrong, but I just feel a little bit more comfortable with somebody else and you feel bad, like you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes you have to make that connection. You have to feel that trust going back and forth. Great. So Tipa's got advice out there. She's on at 8 o'clock every morning on Facebook. Then we also have coming up later this month on the 19th, next Wednesday, our Problem Solving with PAC will be here on YouTube again. And then, also there's a birthday going on. So we have a sale, PAC's 14th birthday. We're offering a 20% discount on the coach, trainer, or consultant certifications taking place prior to September 6th. An email went out last week about this, so check your email or go to our URL down here, tipasnow.info/14th birthday. You'll get a couple free videos and some other stuff with your registration. Rebecca was just talking about the conference. We have early bird incentives, and now we have that additional incentive and the fifth one is free. Plus you get 50% off the relationship guide or the GEMS workbook. Sign up by June 30th and get an exclusive webinar with Tipa in July. And then last, we have a special session of the Champion Days. We're doing this on Thursdays for the Pacific Rim. So times specifically to catch our friends in Sydney, Kuala Lumpur, London. What else do you know about this, Matthew?
Yeah, so the one great thing about this particular champion course, unlike the way we normally run it, is that when you go to purchase this, you're actually getting all 4 champion courses. So you're signing yourself up for 1 through 4 with this particular package deal, and you get a discount because you're signing up for all 4 versus normally we have you purchase 1 for each one of the Fridays that you participate in. And that time zone piece is huge. That's the part that we're really trying to help all those folks out in Australia and New Zealand, Asia, or the Pacific Rim, giving them that opportunity to be able to join in on these champion courses. Because normally that time that we have isn't quite conducive to when it's normal for them over there. So it's on June 2nd, 9th, 16th, and the 23rd. And you can go on to our website and you can find that on our champion courses to be able to sign up for that if you're interested. We're also throwing it out there on social media as well. So the links are there as well. If you look for it on all of our major social media pages to be able to get signed up and take advantage of this amazing deal and the time as well, because that time works best for folks on the other side of the world. So we want to make sure that they have that opportunity.
I think Hawaii like it too. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, and Beth Nolan is the one actually who is heading this up and spearheading this particular campaign and has done a lot of work with it. And the one thing about Beth that has in common with tonight, I think, Rebecca, is Beth had some involvement with this gem that we're going to check out tonight. Is that right, or is it something else?
She sure did. Thank you for that transition. Absolutely. Beth Nolan really wanted to be here tonight to support Darcy because she actually is the person who first said, you guys have got to get Darcy McKay on Straight Up Positive. So yes, Beth will be watching this later. I know, sending lots of love right now to Darcy. And Darcy, can you come on screen? Welcome to SAP.
There.
Am I there? Hey.
There you go.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Darcy. Welcome to Straight Up Positive. So it's so exciting to finally have you on. So a lot of times in PAC, we talk about different personalities, like those live in the moments or those plan ahead. And I love this, Darcy, about you because we actually first connected, I think it was in March, and you really wanted to finish up a semester, to finish up a class that you were teaching, which we'll get into more. And so I feel like we connected so long ago, and I'm happy to finally have you here. So welcome to Straight Up Positive.
Thank you for having me.
So happy to have you here. So one of the questions that I always enjoy talking with folks, Darcy, is how they first became aware of PAC. And your story was especially fun to hear because you actually, it came from a place of curiosity. You noticed something in a colleague. Can you tell our viewers more about that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So when I first came across Teepa Snow and the PAC philosophy, it was during a transition in my work career. So I've been in long-term care and around long-term care for years, going on 30 years next month. And I've been fairly successful at my approaches and things like that. But what was really cool is part of my new role would be supporting long-term care and our community in general. And so during one of my orientation sessions, I was out with the person who was going to orientate me into my new role. And we went to a long-term care home, and they had missed some education that she'd put on. So they said, "Hey, can we film you?" And she's like, "Sure, go ahead." And so they started filming her, and then instantly, so what she started doing, and any trainer out there, they'll recognize this, but she started by saying, human beings have 5 ways to take in data from around the world to get it into our brain so that we can process it, we can work with it, and we can. So she started, and she had me like hook, line, and sinker, and like, yeah, this makes sense. Yeah, yeah. And so she'd packaged this up. And part of me was thinking, it's like, oh my God, how am I going to follow this act? And like, how am I going to get these skills? So afterwards, we had our debriefing, and I'm like, hey, you got to tell me what's going on here. Like, how did you know how to package that up so well? So anyway, she exposed me to her Teepa Snow training and what she had done. And so I knew right then and there, like, this is not something that I can actually wait for before I start my job. This is something I needed to incorporate like really early. So within the first 3 months of my training and orientation, I actually booked vacation time, flew across the continent to get trained by Teepa in Vancouver, Washington. So if anybody knows, like, geographically, I'm from Canada. Teepa actually lives about like 750 miles directly south of me. But for this training, I flew an additional 2,000 miles. Just that's how powerful I saw this to be, and haven't looked back since. That was about 4 years ago.
That's so awesome, Darcy. So you traveled very far. Right now, with those courses being virtual, people aren't having to do that travel. But for you, you like, I will make it happen. I'll do whatever I have to do because you noticed something in your colleague that was different. And
Well, she
that was part of
connected.
it.
She was able to connect with her audience, and yeah, just kept us all on the edge of our seat. So I knew I had to be able to be able to share that too.
Well, that's so cool. So part of that connecting with your audience, I know, is one of the exciting reasons I want to have you on tonight, because you actually work with a unique group of folks. And you mentioned you're from Canada. So can you tell us about PSWs in Canada and what you do with the training with PSWs?
Oh, sure. So PSWs in Canada, so they're it's personal support workers. So that can be any person that requires assistance with their activities of daily living. A personal support worker can assist with having the proper training in the background. They can assist actually with delegated acts from regulated health professionals as well, as long as they have the scope and they're actually working within their scope. But the education itself for the personal support workers offered through either colleges in Ontario or schools for adult learning. And so now, just to give you an idea, because I know in the States, I don't think there's anything directly equivalent. But just to give you an idea of what the education is, it's about either 6 months full-time studies or about a year part-time studies to be able to become a PSW. But within that, there's lots of learning outcomes that they have to be able to pass according to the college's standards. So that would be things like being able to work within their own role and understand what it is, being able to provide person-centered care, establishing and maintaining healthy relationships, assisting with ADLs, identifying abuse, and actually looking at some end of life care components to it too. But one of the standards, one of the learning outcomes that really stuck out for me, and was just like glaring, and you'll see why it stood out, is because what it actually said. And I'm thinking to myself when I read it, I thought, oh, I know the perfect approach. Right. So the 14th of all these on this list was to be able to use identified approaches and best practice to support positive and safe behaviors in clients experiencing cognitive impairment, mental health challenges, or responsive behaviors. So immediately it's like, I got thinking, it's like, do I know any identified approaches that work? Right. Like, what are the best practice approaches? And so it's like just staring at me in the face. So I knew immediately, like, the PAC philosophy was a sure fit for this component of the PSW course.
So let me dig a little bit into that, Darcy, because a lot of times we make the comparison that the PSW role in Canada is equivalent to what we have as certified nursing assistants. But it's sounding like that's not such a great analogy, because the intensity of the coursework, it sounds like, is much more intense for PSWs.
And that's where I'm actually not sure, because I did try Googling. I love when Greg always talks about going to Dr. Google. I tried doing that same approach, looking for the CNA. And there's some scopes of the CNA that's actually larger than the PSWs, right? But so, which is interesting. But all in all, we do need the education to be able to deliver bedside care.
Absolutely. So it sounds like the different schools that offer the PSW training, you have the set criteria, and within that, that's where you as an instructor, it sounds like, have some flexibility to work. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So there's like 200 colleges in Ontario that are delivering like PSW programming based on those 14 learning outcomes. So it's like, depends on how the instructors will put it together to meet those learning outcomes.
So as long as they're meeting those learning objectives, it could be a very different training across those 200 in Ontario.
Yeah. And actually, Rebecca, I started out as a healthcare aide. So this was even before the PSW, the personal support worker, came out. So that's dating me back about 30 years. So there weren't any standards back then until a couple of years after I was doing that. So we've had these standards for the personal support worker since 1993 or so, that we've been working with. So all the colleges will have to work around that, their outcomes.
So the standards have been in place for quite a while. And then I think I remember you telling me that when you first kind of partnered, your organization partnered with this PSW school to deliver the PSW training, you looked at that curriculum and you had some ahas about it. Is that right?
Oh, some ahas. That's being very, very delicate. I had
Positive
some
approach to care.
yeah. I was really shocked because, like I said, I did this like years and years ago. So like back in 91, like I had some basic education. It was 16 weeks long, and it was just really, really basic. Let's get you in and trained. 1993 came along and they had these standards. But when I came on board, even a couple of years ago, I got to look at the curriculum, what they were working with. And so this is where I had my aha moments. It's like, hey, we got to do something. We have to really work on this and change this, because we know better. Like we know new information, we know better information. We need to get this out there. And I'll give you an example. So when we started working, or when I started looking at this curriculum, I started with the very basic, like, stages of dementia. So we were still working with early, middle, late, right? So something like very archaic and years behind, doesn't give you any real information to work with. So that was the staging of the dementia. I thought, well, we can do a lot better there. So I kept on looking through the curriculum. And then it was the next part I came across was looking at behaviors, because that was my real piece that I wanted. Like, hey, I know these approaches that will work. So when I looked at the behaviors, what I was working with and how they were describing them, and this is where I knew it had to change, but the curriculum was describing catastrophic reactions and agitation and restlessness and aggression and combativeness and screaming and inappropriate sexual behaviors and hoarding. And so from that, I knew immediately the first thing that had to change in the course was the language, right? So the language was the first component of the course to go, and to get replaced with the new language, with the positive approach to care language, so that people actually understood what it was they were saying and why they were saying it, as opposed to using some descriptors that really didn't help.
Yeah, so the first part was just even changing the way we talk about dementia, the way we talk about things that we see. And then from there, continuing to overhaul really what your students experience. And I think one of the big pieces that you shared was these kind of reflective journals that they have to submit every week?
Mm-hmm. So it was weekly for several weeks. So in total, we had classes for 14 out of 15 weeks. And I think they had a total of 9 surveys that they had to hand in. But the surveys came out of a place because right now we're in that virtual world, and I'm not allowed in my regular job to be able to support long-term care in person, right? Because I'm not seen as an essential care person, so I'm on the outside. So out of necessity, I came up with like, how am I going to actually get in there, see what's going on, and understand what's going on? So I came up with the idea of doing surveys, weekly surveys, just using SurveyMonkey. But I worked it around the positive approach to care, and it was kind of neat because can I talk about the surveys now? Is that cool?
Yes, please do. Yeah, because I think you actually, your students have to talk about how they use the skills, right? So it's not just talking about skills at this 300,000 or 30,000 foot view. It is like, how did you put the skills in practice this week? What worked? What, right?
Absolutely. So each survey, so they had 5 main PAC reflective surveys, and that was broken into 5 different areas. So each week they had to do this, and it was one of those things that if you didn't do it, you're not going to pass the course. So like it was a requirement as part of the participation piece. So so one of my takeaways that I learned a long time ago with PAC is knowing your audience, right? Really knowing like who you're working with and what their styles are and things like that. So my survey always started with some kind of reflection as to, tell me more about you. Like what makes you tick? And because I had several surveys to work with, I didn't have to ask all the questions all at once, right? So I kind of picked and chose which ones to use and when to use them. And so the first, I'll give you an example. The first one I asked is, as I said, on a scale of 0 to 100, where do you find yourself? Like, and at one side of the scale is you read all the instructions before you do any actions, before taking any actions. But on the opposite side of the scale, they just jump into things. So I kind of wanted to gauge where they were on that. So that was the first piece. I just, something about them. The next part of the survey was all about the class content. Because we had weekly classes, I wanted to see that there was some kind of level of understanding about what we had talked about, what we had shared, what we had worked through. So there's class contents, and that would often include questions about PAC, right? So it would be maybe like, even what are the acronyms, or looking at different things, like, because there's still a lot to know. I'm still learning lots too. And every survey talked about where they wear the name tag, right? So it was kind of one of those things that is like, one of those skills. If there's any takeaways, like, we just get them doing that. So there was those 2 pieces, and then the next part was where it actually started looking at what they're doing and reviewing, and it was a peer review. So part of the survey was watching, and I got to use old clips from me when I would do my recertification, and you'd have to do your approach using hand under hand for part of that. It's still on YouTube, so I just actually used that as like, hey, could you see the steps of me doing it, right? What steps did you recognize? And then they had to be able to repeat that. So recognizing what they were actually doing. And then we got into the skill building. So it was looking either at using a positive personal connection or a positive action starter. And so each week they got to choose one or the other that they got to work with. But whether they chose the positive action starter or the positive personal connection, that was broken down as well into like describe the situation, right? So what had happened, like who was the resident? Because one of my other hats that I wear in the community is I support lots of the long-term care homes. Because I support lots of long-term care homes, I know who's in them, right? So when I'm asking them to tell me who you're working with, I'm probably going to know who they are, right? So I can follow up. So I'm in a really unique situation that way. So we would, so from that, like who was the resident, then we would look at what gem state or do you think that this person was in, whether or not they incorporated a hand under hand technique, whether it worked well and what they could do different. So it was just really kind of high level, like what did you do there? But from the gem that they chose, it actually took them to the next part of the survey, which was a more detailed gem. And I loved how you started talking about PAC in action using all the gems, because I'm like, oh, this is like really heavy laced in gems because it just makes sense. It's such an easy go-to. But with the gems, I'm just going to my notes so that I'd made.
Sure.
But when they got to the detailed gems, it was about what did you see this resident do? And so we actually started working through all the TIPA Snow techniques themselves when we're breaking down, like, what did you see them do? And how did you respond to their vision changes? So for example, if they chose the emerald gem when they were reporting, it would prompt them about talking about binocular vision or task versus social vision. So it was there, and then they got to build on that. And then it was like, what did you hear, right? So we used all those different ways to connect with somebody and had them describe the situation, and always looking at like what worked well, what could we do different, and then later at the end of the quizzes, there was more questions on gems, because what I wanted to do is, even though they were answering questions on gems, I wanted to make sure that they were getting that they are different, right? So there's more questions for me to be able to engage whether or not they were getting it, whether they were just trying to answer it. But the great thing is they were getting it.
Yeah, I love that, Darcy, because it's not like, I mean, we've all had instructors who, I mean, you just kind of dial in and you kind of can answer some vague answers. But what you're talking about is such an intense survey. Like when you said it's really like a reflective survey, I'm picturing like, what did you try this week? No, I mean, yours, like there, if you pick emerald, it's taking you to this menu. And I mean, that's just, it's so intense. But also, Darcy, what's so cool is that you also had them look at themselves and you learned about your students so that you could best support them. And I think that's one of the things that makes PAC so different is really, we've had folks on the show who said, you know, I came to learn about training others and I learned a lot about myself in the process. And so for you, helping these new PSWs identify some things with themselves as well as they are identifying with the folks that they're working with, that's pretty cool. I'm curious if there's anything, Darcy, that you, because a lot of times we'll talk about the changes that we've made in our practice, whether that's as this instructor or delivering care, changes that you've noticed in yourself using PAC skills.
My approach to everything, my approach to life, actually, right? Because PAC isn't just about going to work and saying, hey, how are you? Good to see you, right? It is an entire philosophy, right? So once you start incorporating and realizing that we have brain changes, right? We're all on that spectrum too, right? Yeah, and all those, and you guys touched on the 6 pieces of the puzzle. And one of the things that I totally is weaved throughout the dementia care component is building on the pieces of the puzzle. So even all these surveys, it's still underlying the pieces of the puzzle. So and one of the actual extra surveys that they got that wasn't directly PAC still was all about PAC, right? So they had a, we call it a forget-me-not survey. So it was all about your personal preferences. So it was a survey of 20 pages and 218 questions. So yeah, so lots of questions. And what I was afraid of is I was going to say, hey, here class, do this. And I was going to get all this like pushback saying like, oh, you asked too many questions. You're asking us too much. It's way too much. And the opposite happened, because what we did is, and I even took the survey too. So even though I created the 218 questions, I took the survey. I'm not going to ask anybody to do something I'm not willing to do myself, right? And it took me over an hour to do it. And I knew the questions. That was the tough part. But what was really cool is we were able to bring this in back into the learning and education, because one of our classes, we looked at our own survey. What did we like? What were our preferences? And some of the questions were, none of them were cognitive that they had to think about and pull information. It was all about, what's your personal preference? How do you like this? What would you prefer, this or this? And what was interesting is when we looked at all the results and we looked at a class of 20, everybody was so different. Everybody was unique. Not everybody liked their toast a certain way, right? And not everybody liked the same games. Nobody liked Bollywood movies or Western movies, but all the other movies there was something else to be had, right? So I could find something for them. But when we looked at this, and the neat thing is the class cohort, right? So the group of the 20, that's about sometimes what you look in long-term care of, a group of 20 people living together, or 20 residents or 20, 30 residents. And so what they were able to do is look at personhood and look at that, hey, I'm not agreeing with the rest of my class. Like, how am I going to provide care for 20 or 30 different people that might not agree? So we were able to bring all the pieces of the puzzle back in using Teepa Snow's kind of philosophy and looking at personhood. So that was fun.
It sounds like a real AELC of, what did you notice about this survey? What did you notice about each other? Why is this important? And they really connected some dots about 20 of us in this class could be 20 of us in a long-term care setting one day. And we can't all just use the same set approach. Very cool. Yeah. And Darcy, I'm just curious, because I want to take your class. Like, when I hear you talking, I get so pumped up and jazzed. It's like, I know it would be a big investment and a big, as far as time, because it isn't something that you're letting your students skate by like with no real 218 questions about themselves. That's pretty intense. So, you're saying that your students tend to give some positive reviews, despite that this is a really intense curriculum. And so what kind of reviews, what kind of feedback are you getting for the course overall?
Oh, so I've had lots of really cool review, and at the end of our class time, often students would stay behind so we could talk about PAC, we could talk about techniques and strategies. So I knew their takeaways were they were getting it, they were interested, and they wanted to learn more and be able to incorporate that. But one of my coolest takeaways and is my T-shirt. So after can you see my T-shirt? So I survived teaching the PSW 2100 or 2021 class.
2021
but
class. Nice.
But the coolest thing is what they put on the back, and I knew that there was an absolute knowledge translation into action, and it's I'll just show you what it is.
Go for it.
You can read it. You can read it for me.
All right, let's go. Hand under hand shows you care.
Yeah. So hand under hand shows you care. And Teepa's always talking about like getting the visual, showing something. This is actually something that you can show that you care, right? By people doing hand under hand, by people using it and using these techniques, it's actually showing that we care. And it's showing that there's actually more than just being able to describe something or to define something or to examine something, right? It's actually showing that we're doing something. So that's my biggest takeaway that my students are getting it.
We might have to steal that from you. So hand under hand shows you care. I like that.
Yeah.
It shows that you care. And so that was actually a gift from your students?
Yeah.
The T-shirt?
Yeah. The T-shirt. Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah, so
a
they're really
lovely,
enjoying that.
a lovely card with them all saying thank you and
Oh,
how much they learned and how much they love using PAC. So it's awesome.
I love that. Darcy, now you have taught this course 3 times, is that correct?
Uh, this was my second full time running the course.
Okay.
So, oh, and that was cool too, because when the first time this course happened, it was kind of really quick turnaround time. And one of so we actually did make some changes to the curriculum that I'm hoping if any other colleges are listening, they might want to adopt this too, is originally in this curriculum, the dementia care component came second, right? So people were already working with residents and they had no knowledge of PAC. So what we did on the second time is we actually expanded it from doing shorter chunks of time over 6 weeks to we expanded it to a 15-week shorter time each week, but also put it into the first semester, right? So the students going in to meet residents for the first time, it was awesome that they had some PAC skills.
So making some shifts along the way, and I know that's one of the reasons that you wanted to wait to come on in May, after you had wrapped up another full session. Curious, have you gotten to a point where your PSWs that I would like the Darcy tribe has gotten out there and they're actually delivering care? I'm curious if you've heard from yet any of the employers who have hired your PSWs.
So when I wear my other hat, and I'm supporting long-term care, the long-term care home where the new PSW is with this education, we're actually getting referred to less for our service or our psychiatric service. So there's less responsive behaviors happening because people are probably identifying needs better. So
Wow.
we're starting to see that happen. So
you're seeing some outcomes in this delivery of care and what you're hearing for referrals for the residents in the long-term care. Because instead their workers know how to support them.
Yeah. And now the one challenge now, and this is probably one of those ones that'll probably move forward and talk to ask Teepa anything, but it's looking at now I have some personal support workers that have actually more knowledge than a lot of people that have been working for years and years and years. And so that was actually a little bit of a struggle that the students identified. It's like, well, we get it, but not everybody else does. And so it's working through like, hey, you guys are the change. People are going to be learning from you. You can show people what you're doing, right? And to build from there. So that's, they're new and they're going to change the world.
They are. And we talk about culture change a lot on Straight Up Positive and how it is a process. And so your PSWs are going in and seeing a disconnect from what they learned, maybe to delivery of care from others. But you know that, what is it, the rising tide? There's some kind of saying about that.
Well, other people will follow them.
Yeah, I hope so. But it's all about constantly changing and evolving. And it sounds like from the first session of your delivery of this content to the second, you've started making some changes, and kind of makes me think about how PAC has really evolved over this past year and a half, even though it's, Carrie said in the intro, we're celebrating our 14th birthday. But changes have had to happen. And one of the changes that we wanted to talk about tonight was bringing Catherine on to talk about some new offerings that we've been posting on Mondays. So Catherine, welcome back to Sub.
Hey, thanks, Darcy. You're very inspiring, gotta say.
Oh, isn't that awesome? Totally. And like Rebecca said, I would love to join in. I wish I could go take his class.
I know. Let's do it.
That would be so awesome. So Catherine, I thank you very much, first of all, for coming on tonight and sharing with us about Brain Connection Cafe. And before we get into that, I just want to do a real quick check-in with who is Catherine and what does Catherine do with PAC? So that way, at least anybody who hasn't seen you before, maybe has seen you but doesn't really know the backstory, we can get that.
Okay, I'm not very complicated. I did my first certification with TIPA. It was like the second or third trainer cert ever in 2014. And I've been growing my skills and became full-time with PAC in 2016. I'm a trainer and a mentor with PAC. That's
Very,
it.
very cool. And I know,
Constantly growing, supporting, growing other people in all kinds of different ways.
yeah,
That's it.
inch by inch, row by row. Yeah, just
God help that God. Don't do that. Why did you do
I know.
that? to
Don't
me?
start
Stop.
singing. So thank you again, Catherine, for coming on and joining us. So amazing. And especially talking about something I don't think we've really discussed before on SUP, which is that Brain Connections Cafe. And I know
Yeah.
you've been involved with some of those. So tell us about how that got started. Why did PAC start this whole Brain Connections Cafe?
Well, the Brain Connection Cafe is a gift of COVID. That's how I choose to look at it, is that once TIPA and the team, but mostly TIPA, was kind of pulled off the road in March of 2020, we were looking at ways of continuing growing, and TIPA was doing in her brain, how can we keep connecting? And one of our yearly or annual focus, despite COVID, was relationships. That was our company goal. Our company focus was relationships. And with the time that TIPA had, and also it's a little complicated, but we had something that was what we called an engagement certification course, which is all about how do you engage different gem states in all the different ways of the important ways. How do they spend their time in their activities of daily living, in purpose and meaning, in rest and restoration, and what's the other one? Help me out. There's a fourth.
Is
ADL, rest and
person,
restoration.
and then with the people that are
Meaning.
in.
Spirit,
Okay.
Oh,
spiritual.
spiritual.
Well, that's rest and
Productive.
restoration. Well, we got the idea of how do we spend our time? How do we spend our time? And that has to be different. It's not just for people living with dementia, for any of us. It's not just like the tendency is to go toward arts and crafts. But there's lots of ways to engage our brains that are different, that are not just, so she and the lack of social during COVID. So she created this thing called a Brain Connection Cafe based on models of cafes for people living with dementia and their care partners. This cafe is about socialization, but it's not just about socialization. It's also about your brain. And actually, every time the Brain Connection Cafe begins, she states there are 3 objectives. Meet and connect. Meet and connect with other humans. Humans, not people living with dementia, not people who are care partners, doesn't matter. Meet and connect. Have fun. Number 2. And exercise our brains. Get the juices flowing. Get everybody interested. So who is it for? It's for anyone and everyone, and it's free. And every month is a different theme. They're different, but there are similarities. Things are different, but they're the same. Some of the things that are similar, TIPA leads them. There's also a team of PAC mentors like me or Matthew or Rebecca or Rachel or Beth Nolan or some of the other folks, Debbie Tyler, that you guys might know, who come and join and we participate. But we also, one of the fun parts is we go into little breakout rooms. So we go from this big meeting to special, smaller, more intimate rooms where we get to know each other where a mentor is always a lead who can facilitate. If like Tipa asks a question or says, here's the exercise, or here's the play game we're going to play, or the whatever we're going to figure out, you've got a mentor there who's going to lead it. So you don't have to hold on to that information. It doesn't matter whether you're a person living with dementia, care partner, a kid, anybody who comes, you don't have to hold on to all that. You've got a mentor present. It's our job to hold on to that and help guide and lead the fun or the discovery.
Yeah, and having that support, how much that really helps, especially like you said, if you're going in there and you're like, oh shoot, wait a minute, what did Tifa say? What was it that we were going to work on? You've got somebody who's able to help guide and be that support for you. And so speaking of those things that are happening in those breakouts and during the Brain Connection Cafe, can you give us some examples of things that you guys have been doing in the cafe, ways that they've been getting the juices going with the brain?
Yeah, so there are a couple basic things that happen that are really fun to play with, no matter what brain status you have. And I mean that as like so open, like I've brought a 10-year-old with me, and I brought someone living with dementia with me, and I brought my sister with me who's not living, it doesn't matter. It's still fun. There's a lot of use of some very basic, in breakouts and in the big room, visual cues, auditory cues, some that are on the rhythmic, a lot that are on the rhythmic side with music, also automatic movement, lots of cues, lots of encouraging cues, lots of ways to figure things out using those kind of cueing. And there are lots of puzzles. And the puzzle can be, what do you notice? So I'm going to try to show you something here. Let's see how I do. How's my aging brain doing? Hold on a sec. Which one am I sharing? This one? Okay. Sorry. This is using some visual cues.
Which of these animals lack salivary glands? Which of these animals? Now, here they are. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. Here's the third one, fourth one, and fifth one. Okay, so there are 5 animals there. So,
okay. So that basically was a setup with some visual cues, and we went into a breakout room. We talked about, in small groups, which one do you think and why? And then we bring it back. Why? Which one? Why? We keep tallies. I keep like 3 thought the frog because, 2 thought the cow, 1 thought the bird, whatever. It's just fun.
Yeah. And that's
so go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah. And that reminds me, Tipa actually, during a Tipa for 10 took me through one of the exercises as well, which was I looked at different instruments, and then she asked me to try to name as many of those instruments as I could. And then she got even a little further and said, okay, so which ones do you have to blow wind through, right? Or which ones have strings? Or so it was really cool, just that setup and how that really gets you thinking and using those juices, as you were saying, to get the brain working in ways you probably don't normally do in your day-to-day routine.
Right. Here's the thing is, it's for everyone. It's not just for people living with dementia. And the other thing is, we work as a team. There's never anyone left alone to figure it out by themselves. There is no like, you got more or less, or you figured something out and someone else didn't. It's remarkable. I can say quite honestly, even as a person who is aware of our core team of people living with dementia, this is so open to so many different folks. I really cannot say, oh yeah, that's a person living with dementia, that's a person with a healthy brain, that is a care partner, and that is, I can't. We have all gem states are welcome, no matter why they're in a gem state. And actually everyone to me ends up more sapphire because we have connections and we have fun. It's just an hour once a month. No, wait, every other Monday, right? The first and third Monday of the month. We'd love to have anybody there. It is just fun. It's stimulating. You learn stuff. People learn stuff. You watch her make mistakes. Sorry, that's kind of fun sometimes.
So obviously a fun time for all, because it really is for everybody. And so I'm curious, where would we go to sign up for this when it comes to registering for the Brain Connection Cafe?
That's a great question. And of course, we always go toward, shoot, I thought I had it ready to go. I didn't. We go toward our website. Those are my cats. That's not live. Go to our website. Oh, I did have it ready. So there you are at home. Go calendar, PAC events. So you just scroll down, you start looking at the dates. There's lots of good stuff. Oh, there it is. Brain Connection Cafe. That's it. Coming up next Monday, the 17th. And you could just either view details or register now.
Very cool.
And if you are having challenges with figuring out how to register, don't let that thwart you. Let me see if I can find where to go. Go to info. Shoot. This all this stuff. info@tpasnow.com. Contact us. There it is.
Yeah, and there's that little purple button at the bottom left-hand corner that has the
Right
little,
there.
yeah, and you can click on that, and there's folks out there who are watching those asks or questions, and they get on that pretty quick to try to help out. So like that's Mary Lee is one of our folks, Corey, Diane, Jason. We have a lot of great folks who are watching those things and are eager to jump in and help out. So that is awesome. I thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing that with us and how we can better register for the Brain Connection Cafe and then better understand what's going on with the Brain Connection Cafe, because Teepa mentioned that on the Teepa for 10 just recently, and we had some folks saying, ooh, what is that? Where do I find that? So we thought we would talk about that tonight and bring some more awareness to what that is and how you can get involved with it. So thank you again. I really appreciate you sharing that. And
Sure.
and looking at ultimately, so, and I'm going to throw this question out to everybody here tonight. With all of the amazing things that we just got to hear and experience, I'm really curious, what's one thing you guys are taking away from tonight's episode of SUP? So what's one thing, Catherine, you're taking away from tonight?
Right away, Darcy, the idea that your first focus basically was on language change or perspective shift, however it resonates in somebody's brain, that it's not behaviors, it's unmet needs, or just like, is that as your first, because so many people want to go like fix by doing. It's a entire thought shift that I think is a foundation. And it just struck me that is takeaway, place to focus for a lot of people. Thank you, Darcy.
Thank you. Can I share my takeaway
Yeah.
from Canada? My big takeaway from this, listening to what's happening for the Pacific Rim Champion going on, I'm connecting from Canada, really is PAC is global, right? Like PAC is around the world. But the cool thing is, I kind of have two takeaways. Number one is PAC is global, but the second takeaway is like you don't have to travel 2,800 miles to get trained by TIPA. You can do it virtual now. So there's those options too.
Yeah. And I'm thinking for mine, I loved what Catherine said as far as this Brain Connections Cafe being a gift of COVID, like going back to what Catherine just said about perspective and language, and just that I think part of our being virtual has allowed so many more folks to connect with PAC. And I think as I continue to bring up conference every week, I will share that we actually have more people who are diagnosed with dementia who have signed up for our conference at this point than we have family members or professionals. And I think what that shows me is PAC has become a very safe place for folks to come together and talk about their varying gem states for all of us and the varying gem states that we go through. So it's a cool community to be a part of, that it's so welcoming to everybody.
Yeah, I really like that, Darcy, that you shared that you've gone through these two different iterations. Like you went through your course once and then made some changes. And I really liked the way that you highlighted how you took your own videos from your mentoring to have your class look at that and say, what steps can you identify? And then, like really having that experience, especially because you're virtual right now and can't be, I think that's a great way to really press that home, like see what this is and then share that and go into the learning.
That's awesome, Carrie. That piece of the experience and how that can be used in that learning and helping through those different steps. And for me, I think my biggest thing is, and I know I sound like a broken record and I've said this multiple times, but the more and more we talk with different people in different areas who are using PAC skills and awareness, you truly can use this stuff on anything. You truly can use it on anything, anywhere. And even Darcy making that mention of, it really changed my approach with everything. So that
And
is
can I just bring up, I just filmed today a conversation with Keith Icove, our products director and good friend of mine, for our June online dementia journal. Literally a whole thing about his cat, our cats, and using PPA, PAC skills. No joke, like quite seriously. It's like, so look out for that. In the June memo, we're going to be talking about cats and PPA skills and connecting and responding, not reacting. And who's the big brain that can change is us, not the cat living with dementia, literally. I mean, yeah. So sorry, I'm going to hijack that.
Oh yeah, exactly.
It's
with
there.
PAC, with anybody. And speaking of how PAC can be used pretty much on everything and anywhere, the way some of how PAC does that is by having so many different offerings and different things that they can give out to folks to be able to give them that. So I'm curious, Carrie, do we have anything to share out before we finish tonight's episode, or are we a wrap?
I think it's a wrap, unless you want to share a encouragement card.
Ooh.
We got away from that this time. Thank you, Carrie, for reminding us.
Okay. So I'm going to go random here. I'm going to
All
go random here because it's never failed us before, right? Ooh, I got to grow. See, without the light shining. Okay. Stretch your arms over your head. Take a deep breath. and let it out slowly.
It's awesome. I think that's a
Good.
great thing to end on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Darcy, for being here. Everybody come back next week. We have Pam Reddens. I'm sorry, Pam. We will have you share the pronunciation of your last name as well as all the great work that you're doing next week on Straight Up Positive. So join us back next Tuesday, 7 Eastern here on YouTube.